May the words of my lips, the meditation of our hearts be always acceptable in your sight, O Lord our God and Redeemer. Amen. Look, we are almost at Easter. Next week is Palm Sunday. And as we come to this time, we come to this raising of Lazarus, which is quite interesting. As we come to see the resurrection of Christ, we come to reflect on the resurrection of Lazarus. One important difference is that Lazarus died again. Jesus didn't. When Jesus was raised, he was raised immortal. Lazarus was only raised physically. Interesting that in this reading, Jesus is told that Lazarus is ill, and we're told that he loved Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. And yet he chose deliberately to stay 2 more days to ensure that Lazarus would die. Seems a bit cruel and nasty. But like last week when we heard the story of the man who was blind and he was asked who sinned, and Jesus answered, neither he nor his parents have sinned. This was done that I may be glorified and God may be glorified. So there's a point at which Lazarus' death is not just about Lazarus. It's about who Jesus is. When he says he's going back, Thomas is worried for Jesus' life. And even after Jesus says it's all right, if we walk in the light, it's going to be okay, Thomas says, let's go and die with him. So Thomas still believes Jesus is going to die when he goes back. When he gets there, Mary and Martha come and see him. And though they know that he could have healed Lazarus, they also know that he didn't heal Lazarus. And though he says, do you believe? They do. But when they're at the tomb and he says, roll away the stone, Martha doubts that Lazarus will be alive. So, as much as Martha, Mary and Thomas loved Jesus and believed in who he was, they could not stop themselves from feeling that he had limits. We see in the letter from Paul today that he talks about walking by flesh and spirit. Jesus talked about walking by night and day, and they're very much the same. Of course, darkness is sin, the flesh, and light is the spirit. Paul talks about the flesh being against God, and I think it comes across very harsh, and for all people who live by the flesh, very drastic. But there is a couple of things that are important. As children, we don't always live by our parents' rules. Some do it very well, but some find ways, especially in their teenage years and older ages, to find their own way against what their parents may want. Does this mean the parents stop loving them? No. Are they living in accord with their parents? No. It's important to understand that I believe God still loves us, but what we choose to do may not be God's way. In this respect as well, walking by the Spirit, walking in the light, is walking in the world in a way different to the way of the world. If we look at Thomas, Martha and Mary, there was a point at which they walked in the light, but they also walked in the darkness. Though they believed and were happy to follow, they still doubted and chose the other way. I think we're all in that same journey. We're all struggling to understand the darkness and the light, living in the spirit, living in the flesh. The realities are that we will always struggle. We cannot get rid of the flesh, and if we could, Jesus wouldn't need to die. In fact, Paul says those who believe in Jesus, though they do make mistakes, will be righteous. Because Jesus died so that even though we live by the flesh, when we acknowledge it, when we repent of it, there is forgiveness and acceptance. What is the darkness in our lives? What is the times when we live by the flesh? When do we live by the Spirit? We live in the light. The challenge for each one of us is to walk more in the light than in the dark. Most importantly is that we're leading to Easter. The reading is here today to prepare us for Easter and to remember the great joy that we have, that Jesus was not bound by death as Lazarus was, and that though Lazarus would die again, Jesus didn't. That even though we walk by the darkness, we are not bound by it. We come to rejoice at Easter, the celebration not of our physical lives, but of our spiritual lives. May you journey in this last 2 weeks in the darkness of the world that is around us at the moment, and remember that there is a greater light inside of you and in the world. You just need to be willing to see it and live with it. Amen. Let us now pray for the world, for the church, for ourselves.